Dan Perry here with another C++ tutorial for Dan on Tech. In this video we will look at the do-while loops. We've already looked at the for and the while loop. Now the do-while loop is similar to the while loop. The difference is when you test the condition. With the while loop, as you came down, when you reached the while statement, you tested your condition, you asked your question. If that question was true, you executed some code and then came back up to the top of the loop and asked your question again. That was with the while. With the do loop, what you're going to do instead is you come down, you execute all of your code, then you check your exit condition, you ask your question. If it's true, you come back up and execute the code again. If it's false, if you've reached your exit condition, then you exit this structure. The difference is that with a while loop, you may never execute the instructions inside the loop when you reach it from the top, because as you come down, that exit condition can already be true. With the do loop, you will always, when you reach the loop from the top, you will always execute all of the statements within the code. So let's take a look at that. The syntax starts with the keyword do, and then you've got your brackets to enclose your code, and then while, and your exit conditions. In our case, since we've got variables I and j, I'm going to say while I is less than, let's start with 5, and we're starting at 1. Then in the loop, whatever I need to do, well, as we've done before, let's do a cout and just output the value of I. And now, just like with the while loop, we have to make changes to the value of whatever our exit condition is going to be. In this case, it's the variable I. It has to change somewhere in the loop. So I'm going to do, say, I plus plus. So I'm just going to add 1 to I. And now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, we ran it, and this output should look a little familiar because it's very similar to what we saw before with a while loop, where what we've done is we started I at 1, so when it reaches the do, it doesn't check anything, it goes straight into the loop. So it outputs the value of I equal 1, so we get that line. It adds 1 to I, so I becomes 2. Gets to the while, checks the condition at the bottom. Well, that's still true, so it comes back up, executes the loop again, outputs the 2, adds 1 to I, checks at the bottom, and continues until I becomes 5. Once I becomes 5, then this becomes false, and it exits out of the loop. But it does check that loop, test the value at the end, not the beginning. So we could go in, and if I made a change and I made I start at 10, I said to execute the loop while I is less than 5, but when it reaches I from the top, I was going to have a value of 10 this time. See what happens. Well, it output I. It came down, set the value of I, so I is 10. It reached the do loop, it went into the do loop because it doesn't test anything. It output the line for I 10, added 1 more, so I was 11. Then when it reached the bottom of the loop, it tested the condition, it was false, and so it exited out of the loop. When we did something similar with a while loop, if you remember, it skipped the contents of the loop altogether. So if you have a situation where you want to make sure that the do loop or the instructions inside the loop are executed at least once, that's where you might want to use a do loop. A good example of that is displaying a menu, and maybe you want to continue looping through displaying the menu until a valid menu choice is selected. So with the do loop, we're guaranteed that the contents of the loop will be executed at least one time. Thank you for watching this Dan on Tech video. Please subscribe to this playlist so you don't miss future videos. Please check out and subscribe to our other playlists on the Dan on Tech channel.